This episode of Area Code Batavia is sponsored by Zen Loft Collective. Register now with the link in the show notes to receive $20 off a class or package using the discount code AREACODE. This episode of Area Code Batavia is brought to you by Bulldog Plumbing Incorporated. For more information or to schedule an appointment, visit their website in the show notes or give them a call at 630-313-9109. Hey everybody, you're listening to Area Code Batavia, a podcast about what it means to belong in Batavia. I am your host, Richard Clark. Today, I'm pretty excited to kick off what is a pretty short two-part series where I am interviewing the mayoral candidates. These are not meant to be like hard-hitting questions, hard-hitting interviews. There's no gotcha questions here. The goal here is really just to have an opportunity for you to get to know the people who are running for mayor. If you would like to know more about the sort of facts and positions about Tom Connelly and Jeff Shelke's candidacy, there are a couple resources for you. Pay attention to Tri-Cities Central, the newsletter. There's a link in the show notes. They will be sharing more information over the next few weeks and months. And then there's also an upcoming candidate forum hosted by the League of Women Voters in Central Kane County. That will be on February 4th at 6:30 at the Batavia City Hall. There are two mayoral candidates. Mayor Jeff Shelke is running again, and then Tom Connelly is challenging Mayor Shelke. And so I wanted to get to know both of them a little bit more. Today's episode is with Tom Connelly. Tom is an attorney, and here in Batavia, he was a former alderman, and now he is running for mayor. I wanted to talk to him just about what it means to belong in Batavia, as I talk to everyone about those things. But then, I just had some questions too about what it meant to run for mayor and why you would do it and those kinds of things. And so, honestly, even though these are not hard-hitting questions, I found them to be illuminating and helpful, and also just really enjoyed the interview on its own. And I think you'll learn a lot from Tom's experience and his perspective. Here is my conversation with Tom Connelly. When did you move here to Batavia?
So we moved to Batavia in 2018.
Okay.
I was a law student at Northern Illinois University.
Yeah.
We had lived in DeKalb my first year of law school, but knew that we wanted to eventually end up somewhere in this Tri-Cities area.
Yeah.
And so started looking for where we wanted to end up. We found a great apartment in Batavia at Houston and Jefferson Street,
Okay.
Right downtown pretty much.
Nice.
And it was, just in typical Batavia fashion, a very old house that was converted into like a 2-flat. It had a bunch of like original fixtures, so we loved it. And so we moved there in 2018.
What drew you specifically to, well, I guess the Tri-Cities area, and then why did you land on Batavia?
So my wife is from St. Charles originally, and I knew that she really wanted to kind of lay our roots in the Tri-Cities area.
Yeah.
I grew up on the north side of the city in
Okay.
Chicago,
Yeah.
and we, when just looking around, it's cliche, but I just kind of, Batavia looked like a place that I wanted to be in. The historic downtown, it's in like the small towny charm feel that Batavia still has for sure. Definitely drew us.
Yeah. Was there something specific that made you go, oh yeah, like that's the kind of town I want?
Yeah, I mean, the downtown architecture I loved, like
Yeah.
all the old limestone buildings.
Yeah.
I feel like Batavia, better than anyone really around here, has done a good job of keeping their downtown to look, as close as possible as what it used to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I could tell early on that Batavia was a place that was similar to, different communities that I was familiar with growing up, where there's just like such a strong sense of, Batavia pride, where everyone comes together. And I had experiences through my life where, whether it be a particular school I went to or anything like that, where there was a strong sense of community within.
Yeah.
And that was important to me in finding in Batavia.
So that you grew up in the Midwest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, it's interesting you have had these experiences. Really what you're talking about, I guess, is belonging and like community.
Yep.
Can you like describe some of those experiences growing up?
Yes. So I grew up in a very like tight knit family. So
Yeah.
I had a single mom and an older brother. We were very close with like my mom's parents, my grandparents, and my mom's siblings, my two uncles. We were a very tight knit, extended family. Like
Awesome.
I always tell people, like, my relationship with my uncles and with my grandpa was just like a relationship that most people have, like with their dad. So that was, one big thing. But then I, even dating back to like grammar school and then high school, both were very tight knit communities and like a lot of pride for being from that school. Sometimes my wife even makes fun of me that, she's like, you care about where you went to, school early in your life more than anyone I know. And it's just because they were just set up to be, like community where, you're proud of where you come from and all that.
How does that play out that you care about that high school so much? Like what causes your wife to point that out?
I really like high school sports still to this day. It's like such a pure...
You're following that team a lot.
Yeah, so I'll follow. So my brother and my uncle actually still coach at the high school I went to. So I'll follow along with them. And I have younger cousins that, some are still there and some are more recent graduates. So I've always followed along with them. And that, is another reason on why Batavia was, a good community for us is, there's a lot of Bulldog pride in Batavia. And, I've definitely taken, that on. We like to go to as many football games and stuff at Batavia as we can because I still like high school sports, despite my wife making fun of me.
So what's interesting to me is you talk about this feeling of belonging and stuff. It's really tied to your family.
Yeah, definitely.
Where you grew up. I'm assuming they don't live in Batavia.
Correct.
So how are you replicating that feeling in Batavia without your family being there?
I think that's honestly why I got involved in the Batavia community as early as I did when we moved here is, growing up, like I said, my uncle coached at the schools I went to, and my family was very ingrained in the community that we were being raised in. Yeah. And so, having role models like that throughout my whole life, I figured, hey, if I'm going to be in Batavia, I'm going to be a part of it. I'm not just going to sit back and see what happens. I want to, dive in and help make this the type of community that I want to see.
Yeah.
And so, to your question, I think, getting involved is how I've really kind of replicated, what I, had growing up.
And what was your first attempt at that?
So my first attempt was I sought to get appointed to city council.
That was the very first thing you did to get involved in Batavia?
I mean, not the very first thing. That would be, I guess, the more like official first thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, right when we moved to Batavia, I always made an effort to, go to community type events, like whether it just be like being at the farmers market and just being, in our downtown, like making an active decision to, we live in Batavia, let's go out to dinner in Batavia tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've always been like that, and I have kind of a sense of pride in doing that. So that's kind of the more unofficial way, I guess.
Yeah.
But more officially, early on, I sought getting appointed to city council, and thankfully did, and that kind of is what blossomed me into joining a bunch of other organizations and being involved in other ways.
It is funny because, to my ears, going, I'm trying to figure out a way to get involved. I think I'll run for office is sort of a huge jump.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I'm a guy who wasn't involved at all, and I was like, I'll just start an entire podcast about this stuff. So there's always I think there's a lesson there for people where it's like you can, and I don't know your experience, but I did the thing of going to farmers markets, going to restaurants in Batavia. You're in the ecosystem, you're part of it, but I'm actually, the question for you is, did you feel this way? I felt a little detached from what was going on. It wasn't until I started doing that very presumptuous initial thing of like, I'm going to be the voice of Batavia on this podcast. Like, that was the thing that caused me to feel like, okay, I'm a part of this now.
Yeah.
Did you have that feeling initially?
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of, people in Batavia that have been in Batavia for so long, which speaks so many words about how great of a town it is.
Yes.
There's obviously, people that have had these long-standing relationships that, might date back even generations.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you feel, especially as a newcomer, you might not feel like you can kind of break into that. Mm-hmm. But the minute I got on city council and started getting more involved, you learn quickly that everyone is willing to open their arms and their groups and whatnot to help you even grow further in the community.
There's a cool thing built into the process too, where you have to collect signatures.
Yes.
So you're kind of forced to come in one-on-one personal contact with a bunch of different people.
For sure, yeah.
That's the part that would keep me from doing it, actually. It's like actually having to go door to door to get signatures.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely, despite, running for office and having experience on city council and having a campaign for alderman and then now for mayor, I'm definitely more probably introverted than people would think.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it is daunting to get petitions, but it's been such a good experience doing it, both now and then previously.
Yeah.
And I really have, through my campaign for mayor that's going on now, I've really, kind of expanded the network of Batavians that I've been meeting and learning about, and it's really been rewarding. And I love to, meet the faces of people I may have heard about through through people I knew and things like that.
Yeah, you really have to, especially if you're an introvert, which I have a little bit of introvert. It's like I'm energized by interactions with people, but it's very hard to get there, and sometimes I'm not energized by them. It's just sort of a dice roll. You really have to force yourself. I think that's why maybe we both do the things we do, is because if you don't, you're in your house watching TV all night. It's like there's almost no middle ground
for sure.
For me at least.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What was the first time you remember belonging and feeling like you belonged in Batavia?
I would say when we bought our first house after our apartment, I was a first-time home buyer. We were still in our late 20s, so although we thought we were adults, we still were new at adulting in that type of way. And I remember just sitting in my backyard and we had a big giant tree on the corner of our lot and, surrounded by old houses. And it just felt like this is exactly where I belong.
Okay.
And, it's exactly what I envisioned for what I wanted my future to look like.
Yeah. And
it just was like a total sense of belonging in that neighborhood in the 4th Ward.
Because why?
It's hard to explain. It's just when
intangible a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like people have the white picket fence dream, and we built the white picket fence of that house.
You do have one.
And
it was I was about to say, most people don't have one.
It was just like a total storybook of if I was going to dream up and think about what my first house would look like, it would have been just like the house that we lived in.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I feel that way sometimes when I go out back and just look up at trees. That's like the vibe I get sometimes. Yeah,
we had probably one of the biggest, oldest trees in all of Batavia we had at our first house.
Yeah.
It was massive, but it was very beautiful. A lot of leaf cleaning up in the fall though, for sure.
Can you describe the moment that you were like, okay, I want to run for public office?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in local government.
Okay.
I was a political science history major, so it just kind of was things I was interested in. But kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, when I bought our first home in Batavia, I knew that I wanted to be someone that was involved.
Yeah.
That was helping kind of make Batavia what it's going to be in the future.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just sit back and hope, hey, I hope this is a great place for me and my family for the next 30 years.
Right.
And so I was looking for ways to get involved.
Yeah.
And it so happened that the one of the fourth ward aldermen at the time had resigned because they were moving away.
Okay.
And there was an opening that I saw in the paper to, apply to the mayor, and, you'll have an interview with city council at a meeting. And so I did that. Once I knew that this was a place that I was going to dig deep roots and raise my family, I knew that I wanted to get involved.
It's so interesting that 2-word phrase, get involved, means something so different for so many people. And it is interesting, like hearing your background, it is really clear to me, and you're a lawyer right now, so like it's clear to me that what that means for you is like civic involvement, things around government and law and things like that. For me, it's like cultural engagement, right? And then for others, it's volunteerism or just service, right?
For sure.
It's really interesting though to just hear, because I do think like people see the way other people get involved and they're like very like, whoa, weird. I would never do that. But it's really about coming up with what is the thing I am passionate about in the abstract even, and what do I want to do?
For sure. And we all have different strengths.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to be able to get involved in an area where you think that you can actually provide the most good.
Right.
For sure. I'm like you said, like I'm super supportive of, the arts and stuff throughout Batavia, and will continue to be supportive of that. But I am probably the least artistic person you'd ever met, so you don't want me to be the one that's getting involved to painting the mural.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
I'll help encourage that in our downtown and stuff like that. But I couldn't get involved with the actual doing of that in painting because it's just that's not my strength.
Some of it is just knowing your limitations for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Did you run unopposed for the alderman?
So when I was appointed, there was 3 individuals, including myself, that were going for the appointment.
Okay.
I got that appointment, and then I ran unopposed in the following election.
So it's kind of like a job interview, and you got that job, and then you didn't have to run it. No one else ran against you.
No one ran against me in the open election that came after that.
Area Code Batavia is sponsored by Zen Loft Collective, where wellness thrives. It can be easy to set a bunch of goals for yourself in the new year. I think a lot of us are focused particularly on self-care and goals around wellness, and they can easily go by the wayside if you don't have the support of a community of people who are helping you to achieve those goals. One solution is Zen Loft Collective. It's located in downtown Batavia, and it's a vibrant wellness hub offering yoga, fitness classes, massage, and flexible space rentals for practitioners, creating a community where health and vitality thrive. Kelly and Emily are the women behind Zen Loft Collective, and they blend their personal experiences with professional expertise, helping women navigate transitions like fertility, pregnancy, childbirth, and menopause. They have a special offer for Area Code Batavia listeners. Go to the website, register for a class or a package, and use the code word Area Code, that's one word, for $20 off your first class or package. Check them out at zenloftcollective.com or click the link in the show notes. I wanted to take a quick break to let you know that Area Code Batavia is brought to you by Bulldog Plumbing Incorporated, a family-owned and operated business serving our community for years. It's been pretty cold the last few days. I don't know if you've noticed. Imagine this. You're coming in from a long morning walk. You step into your shower, you turn it on, and the water is cold. It's not good. It's not a situation you want to experience. And so our advice is to go with a tankless water heater from Bulldog Plumbing. They're the local experts who can help keep your family warm and cozy no matter how low the temperature drops. Tankless water heaters provide endless hot water without the wait, plus they save you money and energy. Bulldog Plumbing offers top-notch installation and service, ensuring your home stays comfortable all season long. So for a warm and worry-free winter, click the link in the show notes or give them a call to schedule an appointment at 630-313-9109. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm just fascinated by this. How does it feel opposing someone having not run unopposed, like for me, this would be hard. For me, like having to just go against anyone about anything is just brutally hard. And knowing that there are going to be a contingent of people who are like, I'm with this guy over here. And like, I'm just a people pleaser in general. So how do you think about that? Does it feel different than running unopposed for alderman?
Yeah, it definitely feels different. Just the reality is it will obviously be more work, having an opponent versus running unopposed like I did last time. But yeah, I mean, also obviously it means that you're trying to show people why you would be the better option, I guess. Thankfully, I have a ton of respect for the current mayor, and I think he has a ton of respect for me. So I don't envision, this election being difficult in the sense of either of us, mudslinging anyone or anything like that, which I think is enlightening in kind of the times that we live in now. Right. And I think it's actually good for Batavia to show, hey, we can have, good debate about who should be the next mayor.
Well, let me ask this. How do you, I'm literally just asking questions I want to know. How do you balance public office with a full-time job, especially one as intense as being a lawyer?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. As busy as my job as a lawyer can be, I'm lucky that it's, flexible as well. I'm not someone that has to be, clocked in and reporting to duty from 9 to 5 every day. My schedule is different every day. Every year technology advances. The legal profession as a whole is advancing, and due to COVID, courts had to react to not allowing hundreds of people to come into their buildings every day, and so a lot of more work that used to entail, driving downtown for a 5-minute court hearing, is that type of stuff is done over Zoom now.
Yeah.
So it's become a more efficient practice, and I would seek to make sure that as mayor I was working efficiently in that role as well, and having our staff and government work efficiently as well. So I mean, it will certainly be a balancing act, but I think it's one that I'm well equipped to do. Throughout my whole adult life, I was always juggling multiple things. I always look back to law school, where I was a full-time law student. I was doing the legal type internships, but then I was also working at, a barbecue restaurant in Geneva to, help pay the bills. So it's like I was working and going to school. They were full, long days. And so it's something I'm used to. And honestly, it's, I'm not a guy that wakes up on a Saturday morning and wants to go golfing. I am someone that, likes to work. And,
you like to work?
Yeah.
Do you have hobbies at all?
I don't know if hobbies is the best word. I am a diehard Chicago White Sox fan.
Okay, yeah.
Which is hard to say right now.
Watching baseball is a lot of time.
It is, and they've been tough to watch the last couple of years.
Okay, yeah.
But so that's something that's super important to me, and I like to go to games during the summer and stuff, and bring the kids there, and meet friends and stuff like that. I really do like to do yard work too.
Okay, yeah.
And that was something that I didn't have growing up. Growing up in the city, we never really had much of a yard or garden or anything. And when we bought our first house, one of the first things I did was make a big garden area in our yard. And so I do enjoy doing that for sure during the warmer months.
Nice. When you started as alderman, how long were you alderman?
I was alderman for about 2 years.
2 years. So when you started at the beginning, how did you expect that it would pan out?
I thought that it was going to help me get more involved in our community, meet more people in the community, and build relationships, with business owners, with neighbors, which that is all panned out. I'm extremely grateful for all the relationships that I built through that.
Was there anything that was different than you imagined about it?
It's not a joke that the government moves slowly. And so I definitely saw that firsthand.
Okay.
And that was something that I had to, realize, my work is pretty fast paced, and, we're trying to accomplish goals pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so sometimes government doesn't always move as fast as you'd like or think.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing, or
right.
or the fault of anyone. It's just the reality of the way these things work.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that did you sort of gain a sense of like a not renewed, but like a better sense of why that is?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously there's a lot of layers to it. You see in making decisions on city council really how a decision that might seem like not a big deal to a lot of people can actually really impact someone's day-to-day life. And so it's important that when making those decisions, you go through all the proper processes and really reflect on how is this going to affect the people that live here.
Is there a decision like that you can think of that you were like, oh, wow, that actually did make a pretty big impact, positive or negative?
Yeah, definitely. One of the last hot button issues, I guess, so to speak, during my tenure on city council was the garbage contract had run up.
Right.
We had to select a new garbage deal, and that is someone that doesn't pay attention to local government and things like that might think, who cares? Like, what's that all about?
Go with the cheapest or whatever.
But it really, that's something that, if you think about it, it really does affect people.
Yeah, it's big.
Because the costs associated with that can really eat up someone's monthly budget and things like that. So that I always think to that of, no one outside of someone that pays attention to local government would think that, a garbage truck contract is going to be, some hot button issue. But that's why it's important to realize, like, hey, these are everyday things that affect the people that live here immensely.
Yeah. Was there a moment sort of after you started in public office, was there a moment when you sort of questioned all of that? Like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe this was a bad idea. Was there at least one moment where you felt that?
No, I don't think so. I really did enjoy my time on city council, and it was, I had to step down because we had moved from the 4th Ward to the 7th Ward, and that was an extremely difficult decision and one that I never foresaw having to make as quickly as we did. We just thankfully had the opportunity to move into a house that was better suited for our family's needs, and it all kind of came together really quickly.
How long ago was this?
This was last spring is when that all started, and then I stepped down. I think it was last June. Okay. And we've been in the new house just over a year. But no, I really enjoyed my time on council, and really felt that the work that we were doing there was making an impact on the city and its residents. Enough so that I said I need to, find a way to stay involved, and thought that running for mayor was the next best step for me and for Batavia.
Why?
I think we're at a juncture where we're at a point where we need to build a strong foundation for what Batavia will look like in the future. Yeah. And I want to be heavily involved one way or the other on what that's going to look like. And so I felt that my best role would be running to be the mayor that will help build a strong future for Batavia.
Is there anything in particular that your time in Batavia has taught you about yourself?
I think my time in Batavia, particularly being involved, I have learned that it's very important to listen to other people's views, other people's visions, and really I saw that firsthand on city council. Some of the best decisions that city council ever made was when people actively were listening to one another, because someone might have, one idea, another person has the other idea, and then, as you're sitting there and talking and listening to each other about it, it kind of morphs into a new idea that, takes the positives of both, you know what I mean? Yeah. It really grows into something special. And so that's something that I've definitely learned, about how important it is to listen.
So be honest, did you struggle with that beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, it's, sometimes, you go into things and you think, I know the answer to this.
Yeah.
And, you think that, your way is for sure the right way.
Right.
But then you reflect and you listen to others and you learn, well, hey, there's other ways to do this for sure. And I started, kind of reflecting on that too, in law school and early in my legal career. And something that I always reflect on, I remember a professor telling us the best lawyer is not someone that knows the answer to every question. It's someone that knows how to research and find these answers. You know what I mean? And so, especially with my role as, alderman and hopefully as mayor, I take that thought process very seriously, and that's something that I want to bring to the city government.
So for you, the sort of solution to not knowing something is listening, but then you also talk about research and finding answers. Is that a big part of it for you?
For sure, definitely, yeah. One thing that I always tried, as alderman was, when we're making these decisions, like to have data behind it, or who's this going to affect, how's it going to affect, all that, rather than making a decision just based on one, paragraph explanation of the issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What has running for mayor in particular taught you about yourself?
Taught me about myself.
Yeah.
Kind of relating back to talking earlier that, I'm a little bit more introverted than people might think. It really has taught me that, if I, have the courage and strength to kind of put myself out there, that, I can do that.
Yes.
And, am happy to, meet new people, form new relationships and do that type of thing. Because sometimes, especially outside of, this experience, sometimes I can be a little bit more introverted, but now it's definitely given me confidence to know that, I can be outgoing and meet new people and all that.
What is your wife's relationship to all of this? How does she think about what you're doing and how it's changed you and how what it requires of you and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so she's super supportive.
That's a relief.
Yes. And, this is probably something that I could not do, obviously, without, not only her emotional support, but, she, even through the campaign, and then if I were to become mayor, she's taking on a huge role of, making sure our kids have everything they need, and she's, the main caretaker of them, day to day. So I'm extremely thankful for that. Unlike me, who's a little nerdy and into local government, even before I was getting involved in these things, she is not super, she doesn't always pay that much attention to, local government and things like that. She probably didn't even know, any alder person's name until I was one, you know what I mean? So she laughs a little bit about that, but ultimately she's very supportive, and, in the end, we both, have a goal to make Batavia not only a great place for us and our family, but for, our neighbors and their families and, all Batavians.
One of the things I wanted to hear from you about, because I'm in a similar position, is that and we've sort of talked about it a little bit, but you're not from Batavia in the way a lot of people are. Certainly the mayor is from Batavia.
Yes.
And that contrast alone is whoa.
Yeah.
Is that a pure challenge you have to overcome, or is there something positive that can come from not being from Batavia?
I mean, I think it certainly is a challenge to overcome. That I think is a great part of Batavia. There are so many people that are multi-generational from Batavia, and Batavia is very proud of that fact, and also, protective of the town as well. And so, those are all good things, but, I don't think someone that has experiences outside of Batavia, is a bad thing. Experiencing different areas in different communities, we can really use some experiences to our benefit, I think.
Yeah.
And Batavia, there's been a lot of growth in Batavia, and every year we're welcoming more and more people that aren't multi-generational from Batavia.
Yeah.
And those people, are going to be just as important to the long-term sustainability of Batavia as anyone else. And so really I think it's just about continuing to do what Batavia is, and it's a welcoming place, and welcome newcomers into Batavia as well. And I mean, that's part of my goal as mayor would be to make Batavia an attractive place for individuals and families to want to lay their roots in Batavia, just like I did.
I have this thing that is mostly I view as a flaw. It has its positives, I guess, but wherever I go, whatever context I'm in general, I feel like an outsider. Do you feel that way when you're moving into Batavia and you're making these decisions to get involved? So you're getting involved, concretely you're getting involved. So for me, I do all those things, but I know in the back of my head there's something going, but. Do you feel that feeling?
In my day-to-day life, I had not felt that feeling.
Okay.
I've always, felt that I made the perfect choice in landing in Batavia and that I belonged there. With that said, especially through running for mayor, I definitely get the questions from people. What year did you graduate from Batavia High School?
Yeah.
Is your family from Batavia? I've definitely gotten those questions, and that makes me reflect that might be a challenge that I have to overcome in the campaign. But as we've been talking about throughout this, I was someone that bought into Batavia early and got involved early, and really it's kind of now convincing Batavians why they should buy into me and in my vision.
Right. In all this, what has been your biggest struggle?
The biggest struggle, honestly, is, as we were saying before we got started, I'm not like a social media guru. Trying to build a successful network of getting my message out there. I think that's the biggest struggle, probably with a lot of different campaigns, but it's definitely something I've seen. I think that my vision for Batavia and for the future of our community, a lot of Batavians would like, and it's so, the struggle is making sure that, all Batavians are hearing, that vision and seeing what I'm all about.
Yeah. What keeps that from happening, you think? I mean, I get there is that communication. That's really what you're talking about, the communications piece, the sort of social media engagement, media engagement, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there groups of people that don't connect with what you're proposing as a candidate?
I don't necessarily know if there's groups of people that don't connect with what I'm proposing as a candidate. There's still residents of Batavia that don't even know that there's another candidate running for mayor this election.
Sure.
There are certainly people that don't know who I am, for sure. And I'm not trying to hide that by any means. And in fact, I'm trying to do the opposite to make sure that those people can learn about me. So I don't necessarily think that there's, factions or groups of Batavians that,
to put in terms I understand, no one's mad at you right now?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No one's told me that.
No one's told you.
That's
going to happen, though, eventually, right? Like, you got to be bracing yourself for that.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw that on city council. You don't necessarily hear from people when you're doing a good job.
Right.
Usually, especially in local government, the most crowded meetings are when people are upset about something.
Yeah.
People aren't going to a city council meeting on, a
to
random Monday night to say, great job, you guys did a great job on that. Which is fine, I mean, you don't get involved in local government to get pat on your back all the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am definitely aware that people are not always going to be happy with the government's decisions, and that will take, that will make people upset sometimes. But like I said, I mean, that's kind of a time to reflect and see what, if anything, could have we listened to, or how could we have communicated better to the residents on why a certain decision has to be made.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, honestly, angst and anger with decisions is due to poor communication, because people will feel caught off guard, or they just learned about this issue on last Thursday, and all of a sudden there's a big vote on it that following week. So I think just communicating as best as possible will hopefully help resolve at least some of those. But I mean, certainly you're never going to be able to please everyone, and I get that. It's just about trying to be as consistent as possible and being transparent and communicating with all the residents.
Is there something that you would like to do as mayor that can only be done in Batavia that would be like a unique lean in to what Batavia is about?
So, one of the main things that I've been talking about through my campaign is I really want to focus on, economic development and just new development projects in our downtown. And Batavia, more so than many of the areas around us, has unique assets available in its downtown. We have several vacant lots that new projects can be done at. We, more so than a lot of our neighbors, have great access to the river as well, which I think is a huge strength of ours. I want to help Batavia grow its downtown area in a reasonable and sustainable fashion. No one wants to see Batavia, with new buildings and things that don't fit what the vision is for Batavia, or fit, the historic buildings that we love so much there. So I'm definitely cognizant of that, and I currently am serving on the Historical Preservation Commission in Batavia, and certainly want our downtown to look and feel the way it does. But at the same time, there's room for growth and without changing our whole core identity.
Is there a reason that you can, like a good reason that hasn't happened as much as you would like? Why is that so difficult to do, I guess, is really what I'm asking.
I don't necessarily know if we've been that good at implementing, all the plans and ideas that have been discussed. The city really has to be its own salesman, so to speak, in attracting the right people and businesses and developers to our town, because we don't want to attract people that want to change the character of our downtown and things like that. So I think we just need to do better about really implementing the vision for the downtown. Because there has been a lot of work to going into downtown plans and things like that, and there's great ideas. It's just really kind of about that next step of like, let's implement this and let's get it done.
What keeps you up at night?
I would say things that keep me up at night are things that get outside of my control. In work, when, as a lawyer, you'll do a trial, then it will go to the jury, and at that point there's nothing more you can do. Or you have a brief due to the judge, you write it, you think it's great, you submit it, and it's kind of at that point waiting. When it leaves your hands, it's out of your
so
control.
Relatable
and
to
so,
me. That's why I do these. Is I don't. The control over this conversation allows me to have that control. So now I'm thinking you're hating this.
No, this has been great.
I don't believe you, but that's fine. No, like that sort of. It's very relatable, and it feels like something that would drive you to what you do. Like I gotta take this kind of fate into my own hands.
Definitely. And that's why I've never been afraid to get involved and work on these types of things, because I want to be a part of the decision process. And I've never been someone that sits back and just hopes for the best. I've always liked to be involved in how things work.
What do you feel like it means to belong in Batavia?
To belong in Batavia is really to just be happy and know that everyone else accepts you for who you are and be welcomed into our community. I think we do have a very welcoming community. There's room for growth for sure, but in my experience, as someone that's been here from 2018, I don't have the, Batavia pedigree that others might have, but I've never, like in my personal day-to-day life, I've never felt that, I don't belong here.
Yeah. You've never felt that?
Ever. Like my day-to-day personal life, you know what I mean? Like I talked about, in the campaign, you might feel questions from people that you're like, oh yeah, makes you realize that you don't have the history that others might have in this area. But like in my day-to-day life living in Batavia, I've never felt that, thankfully. I'm not blind to the fact that, there are people that don't, always feel that way. And so, I think Batavia more so than other areas is ahead of the game a little bit, but like I said, there's always room for improvement in that regard.
Ahead of the game in terms of helping people belong.
And being a welcoming community.
Okay,
And, I see it. I'm in the Batavia Rotary Club, and, they do such great service work, and I go to Valley Shelter Workshop, and Hugo and his team do just amazing work for the individuals there.
Yeah.
And, we have a lot of formal organizations, but also just people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and help people that are in need for whatever reason. I'm thankful that Batavia is strong in that regard already, but it's always something that we can keep growing.
Thanks for listening to Area Code Batavia. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. If you enjoy this podcast, why not subscribe to our newsletter? Just click the link in the show notes and put in your email address. Not only will we let you know whenever there's a new episode of Area Code Batavia available, but each issue also brings you 5 concrete ways to experience a deeper sense of belonging in the community of Batavia, Illinois. Most importantly, if you know someone who would love to hear this podcast, please share it with them. Word of mouth is the best way to grow this community and help more people feel like they belong in Batavia, Illinois. Area Code Batavia is produced by Area Code Audio. It's hosted and produced by me, Richard Clark, with additional production help from Jennifer Clark.